Hello everyone, my name is Jillian Schaefer and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, 4 Game-Changing Technologies to Help Grow Your Business, presented by Darrell Boyd, Sales Director, ISV of SWK Technologies. A little housekeeping before we get started. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise down. However, you can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar. To submit a question, look for the question section in your GoToWebinar. We will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. We are recording this presentation and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees as well as to those who registered but were not able to attend. Please take a moment at the end of the presentation to answer our one poll question. And just a reminder, AvidXchange is raffling off 2 Amazon e-gift cards for this webinar. By registering and attending, you will automatically be entered into our $25 Amazon e-gift card raffle. And by selecting to schedule a demo at the end of the presentation, you'll be entered into another $50 Amazon e-gift card raffle. Winners will be selected and notified after the webinar. With that said, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to attend our webinar. We're here to help you get the most out of your software solutions and help you find an easier way to run your business by providing you software and industry knowledge, tools, and support whenever you need it. We've invited AvidXchange here today because they are the industry experts on AP automation. So whether you're here doing research for a new solution or you're just here to learn, we'd like to encourage you to ask any questions throughout the webinar. Lastly, as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. So we encourage you to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Darrell.
Thanks, Jolene. Going to share. All right, everyone should be able to see my screen now.
Yep.
Great. Well, thanks again, and thank you all attendees for taking your time to spend the time with us today on this webinar for game-changing technologies. Here's our agenda for today. We'll start with an overview of the nature of tech adoption today, talk about those 4 game-changing technologies, dive into the value of automating accounts payable, and then talk specifically about the AvidXchange approach to automating AP with a product overview. And then we'll end with a poll question to find the best way to follow up with you, and we'll have some time for Q&A. So let's get started. When we look at the adoption of tech today, it continues to accelerate. The COVID-19 crisis and the impact of working from home environments have prevented many companies from being able to pay their bills with paper checks. There's also a growing concern about fraud risk as a result of paper invoices and paper checks that can sometimes compromise data privacy. Users that have experienced the benefits of software as a service and cloud solutions for automation in other areas of the business bring that familiarity to their environments, and that's also helping to fuel this acceleration in adoption of new technologies. And then finally, there's this thing called a millennial effect, where tech-savvy younger workers are rising into leadership roles throughout different organizations. AvidXchange conducted a customer survey that revealed a certain level of familiarity with emerging technologies, including AI or artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, and blockchain technologies. And we can make that available to those who want it. It's called the future of B2B fintech or financial technology. So if we look at the impact that technology has had on the rise of automation and new technologies, the AvidXchange conducted a survey of 500 or so financial executives from middle management to CFOs of businesses on the impact of technology and the stress that's been felt as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the role that technology plays in alleviating that stress. So most recognize that there is that stressful situation created by the pandemic. They've added new solutions to their technology stack to attempt to alleviate it. And the majority of them say that emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and automation will improve efficiencies during and after the pandemic. So let's take a look at those 4 game-changing technologies. First, artificial intelligence or AI, the Internet of Things or IoT, machine learning, and automated solutions. So let's take a look at these in detail. Beginning with artificial intelligence. What exactly is artificial intelligence and how are businesses leveraging it today? AI can be defined as machines or computers mimicking cognitive functions that we associate with the human mind, such as learning and problem solving, or any computer or IoT device that perceives its environment, takes action based on its learnings, and acts to increase the chances of successfully achieving a goal. So how are businesses leveraging it? Many B2B companies are already leveraging AI to improve operations, including financial services, with 83% of businesses citing it as a strategic priority. Among numerous benefits, the technology can boost labor productivity by up to 40% and automate mundane tasks that take up valuable time. Some examples are freeing customer service agents and call centers and back office staff from tasks such as gathering preliminary information, tracking order status, processing invoices, and transcribing voice to text. By automating this work, companies cut hiring costs and free staff for more fulfilling and strategic responsibilities. It also makes for happier customers. I don't know about you, but it tends to irritate me when I've just told one customer service representative all the information they need. They transfer me to someone else who asks for the same information. Artificial intelligence helps to alleviate that and make for happier customers, as well as a more efficient process for the B2B businesses that adopt it. Artificial intelligence is also used to audit financial transactions, detect fraud, and evaluate credit and overall financial history to make recommendations of loan and credit offerings. Given the results that we've seen here, it's not surprising that the AI market is predicted to grow to $190 billion by 2025. Nearly 1/4 of CXOs believe AI will have the biggest positive impact on their organization in the next 5 years. 84% of businesses say AI will enable them to obtain or sustain a competitive advantage, and 75% say AI will allow them to move into new businesses and ventures. Next up, we've got the Internet of Things. IoT defined is IoT leverages network connections to facilitate communication between devices and systems, or simply speaking, it's different devices, quote unquote, talking to each other seamlessly. So if we look at the connectivity aspect of it, IoT is all about connectivity. No longer do businesses have to conduct various processes manually from different devices. The Internet of Things allows communication and data sharing to happen faster and easier. The customer experience allows for an increase in customer behavior and data on how customers are using products to better understand and predict customer needs and reactions. Efficiencies and productivity. With the expansion of IoT within different areas of a business means increased digitization and therefore quicker speed to market and overall increased productivity and efficiency. Business insights. What is measured can be improved. IoT allows businesses to monitor and collect detailed data across multiple areas of a business, whether in an office or remotely. Companies can leverage that data to make informed decisions that enhance productivity and lower costs. And speaking of cost, the more businesses use IoT to streamline operations, the more efficiently they'll be able to expand the use of IoT to impact their bottom line. IoT can reduce costs through capabilities like energy monitoring that allows workplaces to control thermostats remotely, as an example, as well as cybersecurity monitoring that mitigates risks and detects fraud, and incident detection that sends reports automatically to reduce downtime and save on labor costs. Let's look at machine learning now. And as we did before, start with a definition of it. What is machine learning? It's a component within artificial intelligence. Because it can analyze historical data, spot habits, and make predictions, the technology can forecast financial trends, predict market risk, reduce fraud, and even delay a potentially fraudulent transaction until a human makes a decision. It can also identify future opportunities. It can produce actionable insights gleaned from advanced reporting and data analytics tools, resulting in an in-depth visibility, giving high-level members of an organization strategic insights. An overview of the AvidXchange study that was conducted reveals that companies of all sizes are continually inundated with massive amounts of data. Traditionally, they've relied on trained analysts and data scientists to harness the information and produce insights and analytics that are important components of business intelligence. Now, machine learning and big data technology, also known as predictive analytics, can help. About 1/3 of AvidXchange research respondents are aware of the use of machine learning and big data as it fits into the B2B fintech space, and adoption is on the rise. IDC reports that worldwide revenues for big data and business analytics will surpass $203 billion this year. The fintech industry is one of the biggest drivers of its growth. And according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, the industry is among the best positioned to take advantage of these technologies. An example of a company that's leveraging machine learning is Everstring Technology. Everstring deploys machine learning to identify, extract, and model data so that users in the B2B space can accurately identify business opportunities. For instance, aggregating companies in a specific market and identifying target buyers. AvidXchange uses the technology to not only automate AP and payment processes, but to help companies improve cash flow by reviewing historical payment data and using predictive analytics to receive electronic payments sooner on approved invoices. Deloitte Global predicts that large and medium-sized businesses will double their machine learning implementations and pilot projects this year. Next year, that number will likely double again as machine learning application programming interfaces, or APIs, and hardware become available in the cloud, making it more accessible to smaller companies too. When we look at automation and automation solutions, there are a variety of benefits that accrue to a customer as a result. Business process automation takes time-consuming manual and/or paper-based processes and inserts software technologies to automate that process, allowing employees more free time to focus on value-added work. Automation can take various forms across the business, from workflow automation to financial process automation, but the benefits of increased efficiencies ring true throughout. Types of business process automation are workflow automation, financial automation, human resource functions, and marketing automation. And to summarize the benefits, increased focus on larger and more strategic business goals and initiatives are facilitated through better allocation of resources. There's a deeper insight to be gained through detailed reporting. Error reduction is huge, so there's a lot less room for human error. There's a significant reduction in the time it takes to process and the costs associated with processing. And an overall increase in productivity is the overall benefit. So to recap, our 4 game-changing technologies: artificial intelligence, or AI, IoT, or Internet of Things, machine learning, and automated solutions. So now let's look at the value of AP automation, and then we'll drill down into the specific value that AvidXchange offers with its automation solutions. When automating AP, you gain a new level of visibility and control, giving you real-time visibility into invoices and payments, and providing insights into expense accruals in real time. Improved efficiency. By reducing invoice and payment processing times, customers can streamline approval workflows based on your specific business rules. Better use of time and labor. By eliminating manual, paper-based tasks and allowing staff to focus more on strategic objectives, you're going to make better use of your time and better use of your people. and there's that reduced cost again. And a couple of different ways that AvidXchange can bring to bear operational efficiencies that reduce cost, reducing processing costs without adding additional staff. And then the added benefit with AvidXchange is electronic payments will generate rebates to the customer. So if you're familiar with, say, cashback rewards with your personal credit card, it's the same concept. So let's look at AvidXchange solutions for our AP automation. A little bit about Avid first is Avid is now processing something on the order of 12 million payments every year. They continue to grow, and they pay a specific attention to the service teams who support the user experience throughout, from receipt of an invoice all the way out to issuing a payment. They're adding 1,000 suppliers per week as they grow their active supplier network that's approaching 700,000. AvidXchange integrates with more accounting systems than any other solution on the market, and as a result, enjoy a high customer retention rate, and that customer count is fast approaching 6,000. AvidXchange offers two automation solutions, AvidInvoice for invoice processing and payment processing through the AvidPay network. Let's start with a look at AvidInvoice. To better understand the benefits of automated accounts payable solutions, it's important to look at the similarities and the differences between the two methods for handling accounts payable. This can also help you identify bottlenecks in your process that can be solved with automation. So we're looking at what I call a generic representation of the process before automation. And it may not exactly mimic your process, but we think this is a good generic capture of what happens during the accounts payable process that begins when your invoice is received by the AP department. They can come in many different ways, including electronically, through email or fax, or through the postal service, interoffice deliveries, or maybe even a colleague drops it off on your desk or in your inbox. And when AP processes aren't centralized, handling and processing each new invoice presents a challenge. Once invoices are received, they're either physically handed to an AP manager or team member and entered into the system manually, and they might be scanned to create a digital record. And this is the best case scenario, and it also assumes that an enterprise resource planning or ERP system is in place. But even at that, it still offers plenty of opportunity for manual errors and typos. Well, after automation, the process is streamlined and a lot simpler. The customer is left to code, approve, and select for payment. And this will result in a 2.4x rate of straight-through processing improvement because, again, it's software as a service, but it's also people as a service. AvidXchange employees are offloading much of the work from the customer, freeing them up, again, for more strategic activities. Now, invoices can be submitted to AvidXchange in 3 different ways. As I mentioned earlier, it can be emailed. You can actually scan it in locally if you've got it there, and you don't need to necessarily forward it to Avid for ingestion into the system. And then, of course, it can be mailed, hard copy, to a PO box that is dedicated to each individual customer. Now, once AvidXchange receives the invoice, there are people who are called indexers that will extract all the header detail around the invoice and submit that invoice to the application, AvidInvoice. This is where the process is initiated for approval of the invoice based on predefined rules, conditions, and logic that are specific to your organization. This is the pending approval queue, which shows all invoices requiring action that are specific to each user, meaning the view that a user gets when they log on is determined by their role in the organization. So that could be to review it or code it or grant some level of approval to it before it moves on in the process. The users have access to all the pertinent data, the invoice number, supplier ID, names, locations, amounts, etc. The manual approval process and paper invoice slow down payables, consume loads of account payable hours, and result in missed discounts. but with AvidXchange Invoice, approving invoices is simple and it just requires selecting and clicking approve in the top right-hand corner. You can approve several invoices at once by highlighting that invoice, clicking the box in the left margin and click approve, and you've approved multiple invoices at once. The invoice detail page gives you more detail here, and this is where you can code the invoices. The left-hand side of the invoice detail page shows all the invoice header information that was keyed in by an indexer at AvidXchange, and then you have the invoice image on the right. At the bottom of the screen is where coding takes place. AvidXchange uses smart coding tools that help populate this information for you, that saves time and reduces the tedious manual aspects of coding. A couple of the techniques that are used in smart coding are, one, default GL code. So when you receive an invoice from a specific supplier, 100% of the amount of that invoice will pre-populate to a specified account code. Of course, you have the ability to go in and change that at will on the fly. So it'll give its best effort to code it, but then rely on you as the user to change anything that needs to be adjusted. There's a similar process called use previous, where the system, quote unquote, remembers how an invoice was previously coded. The subsequent time an invoice is entered, the system will remember the distribution lines associated with this particular supplier and supplier account number combination and code that invoice for you. So now that all your invoices have been coded and approved, AvidXchange can also pay your suppliers using AvidPay. With AvidXchange, you get the full power of the AvidPay network that consists of, again, approaching 700,000 suppliers, many of whom, about 40% or so, accept electronic payments, again, giving you the opportunity to earn rebates through the MasterCard arrangement and relationship with AvidXchange through the AvidPay network. You also have the ability to take advantage of AvidPay Direct for direct deposit, or a paper check is always the default if a supplier cannot or would rather not accept an electronic payment. One of the things that is a point of pride for Avid is the adoption rate that they've achieved, which is 40% or more for those suppliers willing to accept electronic payments. And again, I'd say that one of the key differentiators you'll find with the AvidXchange solution is the support teams and the extent to which they support the experience and offload, again, many of the tasks that the customer might have had to perform previously. So here's the AvidPay network process. And AvidPay optimizes and automates your payment process by using payments generated from your accounting system. AvidXchange begins the payment process and provides you with the option to approve payments before money movement begins. So once payments are approved, the money is pulled from your existing bank account through an automated ACH debit request, and it's moved into what's called a clearing account or trust account, which is the third-party account where all payments are staged and are from there made to suppliers via a virtual card, AvidPay Direct, or a paper check. And that's based on the supplier's payment requirements. With a virtual card, it's a one-time use MasterCard preloaded with the required funds needed to successfully process the payment you've uploaded into the AvidXchange system. Suppliers accepting this form of payment must already have their own merchant account to accept virtual cards. Since a virtual card is pre-funded, there's no credit involved whatsoever. The other method I mentioned is AvidPay Direct, or also called APD, which is an enhanced direct deposit mechanism for providing payments to your suppliers. AvidPay Direct is available for those vendors who choose not to process using virtual cards for whatever reason. And once enrolled in the APD program, all payments are automatically deposited into their desired bank account from the AvidPay clearing account. An electronic remittance is also sent to the supplier's preferred email address. Now, as I mentioned, paper checks are always available as a payment option for suppliers. AvidPay checks are also issued from the AvidPay clearing account, which eliminates the client's exposure to check fraud risk. Positive pay is included at no extra cost for every check printed. For consistency, AvidPay checks are formatted identically for all standard AvidPay clients, but they do reference the client name for ease of reconciliation against the invoice. And with that, I will hand it back to Jolene to wrap up and answer some questions.
Thank you, Darrell. We'll now open it up for questions. If you have any questions, please enter them into the questions section of your GoToWebinar. And while we're waiting for those to come in, I'll launch the poll. Please answer the one poll question you see on your screen. And just a reminder, everyone, by selecting to schedule a demo, you'll be entered into a $50 Amazon e-gift card raffle. And it does look like we have a few questions that came in during the presentation, Darrell. The first being, can you give another example of how AvidXchange uses machine learning?
Sure. We didn't really talk about it specifically in the context of some of the smart coding features, but that is an example of machine learning, because the system does learn, so to speak, based on previous usage, how to code an invoice automatically, based on parameters that you've set up.
And the second, what kind of savings could I expect after automating my accounts payable?
Good question. And I want everyone to remember the number 60. It's a good rule of thumb to remember when you're thinking about not only the cost reduction, which is around 60% on average, but that's also owing to the fact that there's about a 60% reduction in the time it takes to process an invoice and issue a payment. So from start to finish, an overall reduction of 60% in the time it takes to process an invoice and a payment. So yeah, 60% is a good rule of thumb when you think about, on average, what kinds of savings you can anticipate.
And we have another. Does the AvidXchange AP automation integrate with Sage 100?
Yes, it does. And in fact, it's one of the early integrations that was produced with Avid. And in fact, SWK has been integral in providing that last mile of integration with what's called a connector to help with the flow of information between AvidXchange and Sage 100.
Perfect. And we have another. How does AvidXchange and AvidPay integrate with my ERP system, SAP Business One?
I would have to look into the particulars of SAP Business One. I'm more familiar with some of the other offerings, but typically what the first consideration we'd have to make is whether or not we can provide integration through an API, or if it's going to be a file-based integration. I suspect with that particular accounting system it would be file-based, but there are some things that we can do to help with the automation of it. And typically the thing that you want to focus on primarily is the synchronization of payment history, vendor history, between the system of record, which is always going to be your ERP, and AvidXchange.
We have another. Does it integrate with Sage X3?
It does not integrate well with Sage X3.
Perfect. Well, I think that's all the questions we have for today. So thank you so much, Darrell, for your informative presentation and for taking the time to be here today.
Oh, thank you. And thanks everyone
Have
for
a wonderful
joining us.
rest of your day.